this is how you play chess. You play online. You don't play over the board. You just trust me. There's chess.com, which is this one. It looks like a pawn because it's much worse, but everyone uses it. And then there's Lichess, which is literally way better. I would recommend chess.com. I don't know why. I use chess.com. Once you're on chess.com, you need to know how the pieces move. First up, we got the pawn. The pawn moves forward, and it captures diagonally. That's all you need to know. When it gets to the end of the board, you can turn it into whatever piece, but we're going to turn it into a queen. And there's this thing called en passant. Just Google it. Next up, we got the horse, which I drew already. The horse, it moves in an L shape, so it can move like 2 and then 1 over. And it also moves like this, so it can move backwards as well. Next up, we have the bishop, which moves diagonally, and it just runs into pieces. So if you hit a piece here, it stops there and takes that piece. There's a light square one, and then there's a dark square one, and they can't get off of the squares because the way a chessboard is, it's like a checkerboard. Next up, we got the rook or the castle, but you can't say castle because that's a different thing. Rooks move up and down and then left and right, so it's like the bishop, but turn it 90 degrees. I'm drawing this on trackpad, but yeah, these ones are worth 5. I haven't told you the other one's worth, but it doesn't matter. This one is worth more than the bishop and knight. Next up, we got the queen. I don't really know how to draw the queen, so that's my drawing of the queen. Just add a rook to a bishop, and it moves in every direction. That's my explanation. And then finally, the king. It has a little cross sometimes, I think. And this one is like, it just moves around. Only one square in any direction. It's like the queen, but weak. It's like if you were to put your arms out and spin around, it can move one direction, any direction, one square. But don't get hit. You can't lose your king or you lose. Once you're actually in the game of chess, you have to know the 3 phases. One is the open. Actually, you don't actually have to know the three phases. But one is the opening. That's number 1. And this, you kind of just study. Don't try and make your own opening or try and improv it. You're going to do much better if you just learn one. You can be lame and play like the London or something. And if you're black, you can look up defenses like the French or the Caro-Kann or the Sicilian. Except don't learn the Sicilian because Levi Rosman told me not to. But just study the opening, and that's all you need to do. Number 2, because I don't want to write middle game, is the middle game. This one you learn tactics. This is kind of the most important part, where you just play chess. And then number 3 is the end game, and the end game you also just kind of study, but you just kind of get good at. It's when there's like pawns and a king and like 1 or 2 more pieces left. So remember stage 2 in the middle game, you need to know tactics, and that's how you win chess. So the tactics. The first tactic is a fork, and you can do this with like a pawn or a bishop or a knight. So this is a pawn, and it's protected by another pawn that's protecting it. And it's attacking these 2 squares. And what's on these 2 squares? A queen and a bishop. Uh-oh. So now it's the other player's turn, and they can't move their piece. They can't move both of them. So they have to move one. So if they move the bishop away, you just take the queen. And if you move the queen away, you just take the bishop, and that's a fork, because forks have like more than one prong, and they hit more than one thing at a time. So here's the bishop, here's the queen. That's a fork. Next up, we have the pin, which is kind of like, you can do it with a lot of pieces, but I'm just going to do it with the bishop. So here's a bishop, and then here's a knight. And I'll just draw the letter K. And then here's the king. Oh no, the king is also a K. But that's the king and that's a knight. And the bishop's hitting it. It's kind of like X-raying to the king. So you can't move the bishop out of the way, because then you lose your king, and you can't lose your king legally. You lose the game. So you can't move the bishop, you just take the bishop away. Well, actually, wait. That's a skewer, right? I don't know. Pin means they can't move their knight away. And then a skewer is like, I think this is a skewer. It's kind of like the same thing, but let's see, we have a rook here, and then the king's here. I drew the rook way too big. And then there's a bishop here. Wait, no, that's a pin. Okay, let's put the king here. I don't know. Is this different? Okay, this is the rook. This is the king. This is a bishop here, and then it moves here. So it's attacking the king. You're in check. Check is when you're attacking the king. So you gotta move the king out of the way, boom, you take the rook, and that's a skewer, I think. So we'll see these famous people, and they'll have, like, titles like IM, GM, FM, and then there's some for women, like WFM. It's all just, it doesn't matter, because you're watching this video, you're not going to be a master. Everything below that is just where you're at, where I'm at. And you just kind of get a number. People call it ELO, or like rating. Let's say anything below 1,000, you're learning. Actually, you're always learning. But anything below 1,000, you're not good at chess. Anything above, you can like play chess. Let's say if you're above 1,300, you're decent at chess. But it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't know. So how do you win chess? Well, you either let the opponent run the time, or they like, give up, resign, or you can do a thing called checkmate, which you've heard of. So here's a bishop, here's a king, and then here's a queen. And it's these guys' turn. The king's on the other team. So when the queen goes here, boom. And, oh wait, there's a pawn here blocking. This is, oh yeah. So the queen goes and attacks the king, and the king can't take back. The king can't take the queen because the bishop is protecting it. So if you were to take the queen, the bishop would take the king. So you can't move the king anywhere because the queen would take it, and you can't take the queen because the bishop would take it. So the king it dies because it's being attacked and it can't move anywhere. Therefore, these guys win the game. So that's chess. Basically go on chess.com and play a game and study. You may think that a lot of this is wrong and that it didn't really help anyone,